As I listen to the soft patter of rain against the window, I want to share with you a few realizations about life that you, at 30, 35, or, as in my case, 36, eventually begin to notice. The road you've been walking was not designed by you. You look at your hands and recognize your father's gestures. You hear your own voice in a moment of stress and catch the bitter tone of your mother. You realize that your romantic choices, your financial fears, and even the way you shrink yourself in front of the world are echoes of voices that existed long before you were born. Today, I want to talk about the day I decided the cycle ends with me. Not out of hatred, not out of rebellion, but as a radical act of self-love and awareness. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." For a long time, I called my unhappiness fate. I called my anxiety just the way I am. But at 36, I saw that it was time to change. There comes a moment in life when the soul forces us to choose. Either we remain a supporting character in a play written by our ancestors, or we take up the pen and begin to write our own story. And let me tell you, breaking a family cycle is like trying to stop a speeding train with your bare hands. It's painful, it's lonely, and very often it makes you look like the odd one out, the black sheep, the ungrateful one. But let me tell you something else. The black sheep is, in truth, the conscious one. The one strong enough to carry the burden of a truth no one else wanted to face. If you feel like you're carrying chains that were never yours, this video is for you. Subscribe to If Everything Ended Tomorrow and join this space of reflection. Because a cycle doesn't end with a family argument. It ends when you decide that the pain of repetition is no longer welcome at your table. At 29, I had my first daughter. Truthfully, I had no idea what it meant to be a mother. Based on the environment I was in, I felt it was something I needed to experience, or I would regret never having lived it. Pregnancy brought transformations of body, mood, and imagination. When my daughter was born, I remember it as if it were today, at 10 a.m. on a Friday, after exactly 10 hours waiting for her arrival. It was a mix of happiness and relief that she was healthy. I like to say I had no idea how much my life was about to expand. Yes, it was an entirely new world opening up before me. Her needs became the priority. And at some point, I could barely remember who I was anymore. It felt like my main purpose was motherhood. And in the attempt to find myself again, I came face to face with my fears, insecurities, and doubts. Through a silent process, soaked in tears and surrounded by a guilt that feels like a poison you willingly drink. That guilt, that poison I drank in silence while rocking my daughter to sleep, tasted familiar. It took time to understand that I wasn't just exhausted from postpartum recovery, I was exhausted from carrying ghosts. Looking at her face, so untouched by history, I began to see the marks on my own skin that I had never questioned. That's when I decided I needed to become a different person, more whole, so I could guide her and offer her the greatest gift I could, the chance to write her own story. Free from guilt, from shackles, from bonds that were forged before she even entered this world. I understood that my family's shadow was made of silences and unacknowledged sacrifices. My mother smiled while crushing a napkin under the table. My grandmother used to say, "A woman is born to endure." And there I was in my early 30s, about to pass that same survival manual on to my little girl. The rupture began when I realized that loving her had to pass, inevitably, through healing myself. I couldn't teach her freedom if I was still living in an emotional cage. For the cycle to end, the version of me who solved everything for everyone had to die. I was the family's backbone, the daughter who never caused trouble, the one who mediated my parents' conflicts. the one who suffocated her own desires to keep everyone else at peace. When I chose to prioritize my mental health and set boundaries, the family system reacted. A dysfunctional balance depends on no one changing. The moment I said no to a toxic demand or refused certain criticisms disguised as advice, I became ungrateful. I had to let go of the image of the perfect daughter so I could be born as a conscious mother. It's a lonely kind of grief. You lose the validation of those you loved most, but you gain an integrity you never had before. At 36, I understood that rupture is a process of sacred betrayal. I realized that what often keeps us trapped isn't a lack of desire, but an invisible loyalty. A contract signed in the dark, where we unconsciously swear we won't be happier than our parents were, or go further than our ancestors ever could. Breaking that contract hurts because, deep down, we're still the child who wants to be accepted. But I had to understand that honoring our parents doesn't mean repeating their mistakes. Honoring those who came before me means using the life they gave me to bloom in a way they never could. True honor isn't found in repeating pain, but in having the courage to become the first link in a new chain, one made of freedom, not shackles. You betray your ancestors' expectations in order to be faithful to the life beating inside you and inside your child. The cycle ends with me not because I'm better than them, but because I decided the cost of repetition was too high a price for my daughter to pay. And what I found along this path wasn't the emptiness I so deeply feared, but fertile ground, ready for a seed that had never had room to grow. My individuality. Beneath layers of other people's expectations, I discovered a woman I barely knew. A woman who enjoys silences my family called boredom, and ambitions my lineage called sin. That ground, once compacted by footsteps that weren't mine, can finally breathe. I learned that being myself requires a kind of courage no family etiquette manual ever teaches. The courage to disappoint others so you don't die inside. It's a late rebirth, but it's the only one that is truly mine. Breaking the cycle isn't a single event. It's a daily exercise in re-education. I had to learn a new emotional alphabet. Where A once stood for self-sacrifice, it now stands for autonomy. Where G was for guilt, it's now for awareness. I began to observe my relationship with my daughter through this new lens. Now, when she cries or expresses a desire that goes against mine, instead of reacting with the rigidity I inherited, I pause. I ask myself, is this mine? Or is this from the past? Healing the cycle means giving her the right to be a whole person, without the obligation to fix the cracks in my own soul. The greatest gift I can give her isn't my perfection, but my conscious presence. Many times I wondered whether the distance I created from certain family patterns was an act of lovelessness. Today, I understand it's the opposite. Because nothing has a stronger influence on us, and especially on our children, than the unlived life of the parents. By living my life, with my doubts, my mistakes, and my small, authentic victories, I am silently freeing my ancestors. It's as if I were saying to every woman in my lineage who suffered in silence, I see your pain, I honor it, but I will no longer feed it. Healing is an echo that travels both backward and forward through time. People often ask me, is it worth it? Is it worth living without trying to please everyone, carrying the label of difficult without living in fear of rejection? At 36, my answer is yes. The peace I feel today isn't the absence of problems. It's the absence of living a life that isn't mine. I no longer need to act as a repetition of the inheritance I was given. The legacy I'm leaving my daughter isn't financial wealth or an untarnished last name, but something far more valuable: permission to be herself. Today, I know the importance of building good memories together. memories worth far more than any money I could provide. I know that when I learn to care for myself, body, soul, and heart, that example becomes her blueprint for self-love. And more than ever, I know that truly seeing and respecting the human being she is becoming will strengthen her sense of identity. I decided the cycle ends with me so that life, in its purest and wildest form, can finally begin again through me. I am no longer just the result of what was done to me. I am the project of what I chose to become. If you made it this far, maybe it's because you feel the cycle needs to end with you too. Subscribe to the channel and receive more content like this. Maybe you're also tired of carrying inheritances that were never yours. My message to you is simple. Don't be afraid to be the interruption point. The world doesn't need more people repeating trauma out of blind loyalty. The world needs people brave enough to look into their own abyss and say, "It stops here." At 36, I discovered that the end of a cycle is not the end of the story. It's simply the moment you finally claim authorship of the book. And you? What cycle ends with you today?